Hey guys, what is up? SuperKmanrocks here, back with another LPL video. This is actually going to be the first weekly recap because week 1 has just finished up. Week 1 was very, very short. Only 2 days. We had the 9th and the 10th here. But we did see some really, really good action in those first 2 days. 4 series to talk about here. I haven't done anything quite like this before. I'm planning on doing this for the 4 major regions just because I watched them all already. I might as well make content on them. So basically the format of this is basically I'm just going to go through each series that was played, give a little bit of a short description on what happened, maybe give a little bit of analysis on how the teams are looking, how some players, if I, so choose to talk about them, are looking. Nothing too extravagant. I'm not going to go too into depth. I'm not going to be showing, I'm not going to be analyzing film. I'm not LS or anybody like that. So I'm not properly qualified to be digging that deep. Just more so as a recap to what happened for people who may not have been able to catch it, as well as a power rankings update at the end. So if you guys are excited for that, if you want to see it, go ahead and leave a like. Stick around. Hopefully this video isn't too long. I'm hoping these don't become too long. I know that the predictions video that I made for the LPL, if you guys haven't seen that, go check it out. That's a little over an hour, so it's definitely not going to be nearly that length, especially with only 4 series to talk about. So let's go ahead and jump into our first series of the year in the LPL, and that's going to be a Worlds Semifinals rematch. That's going to be Top Esports taking on Suning. Now, this was a very interesting series. Suning actually, as you can see on the screen, takes it 2-0. They swept them in the first 2 games. As you can see on the screen, I like to point out the player of the series, at least in my opinion. This isn't always going to match up with the player that the broadcast picks as the player of the series. And then I actually like to point out a dud of the series. This isn't necessarily someone that I think is a bad player, just someone who didn't necessarily have a very good series. And, if we can start seeing a pattern in that, we can start maybe identifying where a team's weakness could lie. So let's talk about this first series here. Suning coming out swinging. Everybody expected them to be a lot slower to the gun, but they were not. They were absolutely not. They come out and they 2-0 the defending LPL champions, Top Esports, which is a really big deal. Some takeaways. Game 1 was very slow, very controlled. And then Game 2 was a lot more opened up. It was actually, Game 2 was relatively even. It took quite a long time for a team to really break out. Top Esports had a very good early game. But, overall, Suning just looked like the better team. The player of the series for me has to be Huanfeng. He didn't play in Demacia Cup, but he comes back here and he looks very, 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 very good. He went 15-0-13 across the 2 games, both on Kaisa, both really good. The early game wasn't necessarily too strong for him, but it doesn't need to be because it's Kaisa. And I think both games he actually played in Samira. So a pretty tough matchup in lane there, but he was able to stay calm and hyper carry in that late game, which is a big factor. It was a big reason this team succeeded last year was the ability of Huanfeng to hyper carry these late game team fights with champions like Aphelios last year. But now obviously Kaisa being a lot more in meta, Kaisa and Samira being the 2 top AD carries. Kind of shows that, that style of carry 80, the 80 carry actually carrying the game is alive and well. Big shout out, by the way, to On, the support who had his first series here with Suning replacing Sword Art. He played really, really well in this series. He actually gave, if you're a Suning fan, he gave you a lot of hope. I thought he was very, very positive in most of the plays that they made. He was actively making plays on the map. I think that was one thing you were going to be concerned about was a lot of rookies come into the LPL and are a little bit more passive. Well, I guess some come in guns blazing and some come in passive. He definitely came in looking prepared, looking ready to take on one of the best teams in the league. He looked really good. So did SOFM. I think this entire team just kind of rolled. They didn't have to do too much. Bin was really good in Game 2. Angel held it down. He didn't feed, which is good. I think this team just overperformed expectations. Now, talking about Top... this was not how you wanted to start the season. You can see my dud of the series is going to be Zhuo. Their new support to replace Yuyanja. He did not have a good series. He's actually going to be my dud of the week. He did not look very good. He went 1-10-9, but the scoreline is probably not even as bad as he played. He missed a lot of skill shots, especially on that Leona game. His Alistar combo wasn't very good. He just didn't look very good in this series, which is concerning. He looked really good at Demacia Cup, so it's a little bit concerning to see him play a little bit worse here on the Leona and the Alistair. But, you know, obviously it's one game, it's one series, you know, not too much to talk about. Like, you know, we have plenty, 15 more to go throughout the season. So you're kind of hoping on him to turn that around. Another thing I want to talk about as kind of a negative for top here is just the team play in general. It seemed like a lot of the individual players were doing fine in terms of laning, but the coordination and the ability to identify win conditions and to fight for objectives was just not there, which is a little concerning considering you're returning 4 of the 5 starting members from last year's team. I don't really know how to fix that. Karsa kind of got out-jungled in the early game by SOFM. It wasn't too bad, but, you know, obviously SOFM is world-class. Just, it's tough to see, you know, what this team wants to do. They didn't really feel like they had a clear identity in this series, and that's something they're definitely going to have to figure out. Hopefully the hangover from the knockout at the World Semifinals isn't too bad. However, this could all just be chalked up to Suning being a lot better than we expected. So it'll be interesting to see where both of these teams go moving forward. So with that being done, let's move on to our second series of the week, the second series of day 1, and that's going to be OMG taking on EDG, 2 of the most historic LPL organizations, both of which have kind of struggled in recent years. OMG obviously a lot more than EDG. EDG being big favorites going into this do take the 2-1 series win. However, it was a lot closer than I think a lot of people gave it credit for. In game 1, it was a stomp. EDG looked absolutely dominant. Once game 1 was over, we were like, oh my god, this is not going to be a series. EDG is just outclassing OMG in every respect. You know, OMG just had nothing going for them. But then game 2 rolled around, and EDG got another early lead, but OMG was actually able to take that back relatively quickly, and they actually really, really cleanly, you know, found team fights, fought over objectives, and then won the game. And this was a very impressive win, because it wasn't some fluke like EDG making bad plays. OMG was actively proactive. They were doing a lot of really, really good things. Most of that can be attributed to the bot lane. The bot lane was actually the biggest question mark for me. Eric did not look good on OMG last year, and Cold, you know, it just has never really been a standout player, but both of them actually looked really, really good in this series, especially in this game 2. Both of them looked fantastic. Game 3 was really, really close. It was back and forth. It was pretty much close until this a very, very important team fight late game. Viper, you know, really, really showed up, both in game 1 and game 3 especially, but this series in total, obviously his first series in the LPL, EDG was able to take that narrow win in game 3, but it was honestly a lot closer than I think a lot of people had credit for, and I'm not sure whether to commend OMG on that or to say maybe EDG was just a little bit overhyped because they didn't really come out and dominate a team that we expect to be kind of at the bottom of the standings in OMG. So my player of the series is going to be Viper. He went 10-5-16. That game 1 especially was incredibly dominant. He had a very good game 3 as well. Just a super solid performance, something that is very comforting if you're going to be, you know, expecting big success out of this EDG team, because he really needs to step up for them to really show off. One thing to note, JJ was in here instead of Clearlove. Clearlove was not in the lineup. I think they were testing out whether or not they can actually play without him. Clearlove obviously was originally going to come out of retirement to play jungle because they felt they needed a shot caller. But, you know, Flandre is kind of stepping up, and they're kind of seeing what they have in Flandre in terms of leading and shot calling in the top lane. And it looked really good. JJ actually looked really good in this series. I thought he was one of the best performing members of EDG in this series as well. So I would expect to see him, at least until he proves that he is not a really, really solid jungler. And then the dud of the series for me, that's going to be New in the top lane. I didn't want to give it to New because the circumstance wasn't really his fault. He went 3-12-12. That game 3 especially was really tough on him. He got hard camped. He actually got the counter pick, the Kennen, and he was able to do nothing with it. The Kennen and the Aatrox is such a tough matchup for the Aatrox, and the Aatrox just got ganks over and over and over and over. The Pantheon just sat top lane and ganked that Kennen over and over again. New got so far behind that he wasn't really able to do anything in the game. The Kennen ults were pretty much irrelevant. He was having to blow flash to get out of engages rather than to engage himself. Just wasn't a very good series for New. That being said, he also kind of got hard beat in game 1 and didn't really matter, honestly, too much in game 2. But that's kind of a theme we're seeing with Renekton. Renekton has just, he's being picked, but he just seems to have such a low impact on the game, at least in my opinion. So we'll see how that adapts. But overall, I think the only other minus I think you can give for OMG is going to be Wooming, but not for the series. Game 1 for Wooming was really, really bad. He had some plays that were just, on the Twisted Fate, he had some ults that were just horrible. He would ult in and immediately die because nobody was around him. And just some really, really terrible plays in game 1. But game 3, he actually played really well. I actually thought he was a big reason why the team was still in it in game 3, why it was so competitive. He was probably the best performing member of that team in game 3. So I wanted to shout him out for his awful game 1, but also he had a very, very good game 3. So that is worth pointing out. In the future, EDG needs to be able to consistently take down teams like this. If Viper can continue to play like this, you're going to hope for better performances from Scout and from Flandre in the top lane. Flandre didn't play bad. He had a massive CS lead in game 3, but just, you want more takeover. If that can happen, EDG is going to be really good. OMG, I think you're pleased with what you saw. You're a little bit concerned about the solo laners, but the bot lane is far exceeding expectations, at least with how they played in week 1. Let's go ahead and move on to our third series, our first series on day 2, which is today, actually, coincidentally. And that's going to be Team WE taking on Rogue Warriors. Now, Team WE, a lot of people have a lot of hype for them going into this year, and they certainly proved it here. I think they do have flaws, which I'll get to, but overall, I think there's a lot of takeaways from this that you're very excited about. Rogue Warriors, maybe not so much. Game 1 was really WE favored. It was a very slow, methodical game, but that's exactly WE's style. That's exactly what they played last year, was control, not making mistakes, not being out of position, and then just having great macro and punishing any mistakes that the opponent makes. That is exactly what we saw in game 1. And then game 2, we saw a completely different game, a very, very aggressive game. Rogue Warriors in game 2 actually had quite a massive lead that they threw at a very, very stupid Baron fight. I think you're looking at a very, very different game if that Baron fight goes differently. But either way, WE is going to walk away with the 2-0 win. Some players that I'd like to talk about, at least on the WE side, are Beishang and Shanks, who I think were easily the 2 best players in the series. Shanks obviously receiving both player of the games. I think that was mostly just because nobody on WE really stood out. He didn't have any spectacular games, but he was consistently really good, which is a big sign for WE because he was the big question mark going into the year. He didn't look that great at Demacia Cup. But it looks like his proactivity and his aggressiveness is definitely going to be an upgrade to the more passive style that Teacher Ma was giving them last year. And then, for Beishang, I actually thought he had a really good game. He didn't get talked about much by the broadcast, but I actually thought he had especially a really good game 1 on the Sejuani. His engages were really clutch, pretty much stopping Haro on the Pantheon from doing absolutely anything. Anytime Pantheon would go in, he would immediately get CC chained by the Sejuani and then the Renekton, and it was really, really tough for Pantheon to really have any sort of agency in the game, and when he's your main engage, that's definitely a problem. So I wanted to shout out Beishang because I thought he had a very good game. He on the Olaf in game 2, he wasn't necessarily as dominant. I still thought he was pretty good, creating proactivity early, keeping up and farm with the Graves is always a plus, but, not killing Forge in that team fight was a little bit of a misstep there, but, it is what it is. You're not always going to get perfect play. And as I don't think I said this, Shanks is actually the player of the series. I think he was just the most consistent. Beishang actually is, I think he was a little more standout, but Shanks was a little more consistent throughout the entire series. There's actually some positives to talk about on the Rogue Warriors side, though. And I think it's going to be Chocho and Kellen. Kellen stepping in here, he's actually playing over Betty, which a lot of people were not expecting. But he actually played super well, especially in that game 2 on Aphelios. This bot lane looked really, really good in game 2. The Aphelios Thresh is definitely a bot lane that I expect this team to be going to a lot because they looked very comfortable on it. Chocho was hitting every single hook, creating, opportunities that weren't there. hit that incredible hook that he hit on Zhao Meng in the bot lane fight where everybody teleported in, the first blood, I believe, was unbelievable. I don't know how he threaded the hook into there. And then Kellen just got absolutely snowballing on the Aphelios, who is, honestly one of the biggest hyper carries in the game still, even after all the nerfs. So I expect to see this bot lane kind of go to those more scaling picks, play through Kellen a little bit more, because I think he showed that he has the potential to do that. They actually won bot lane, I believe, in both games. Definitely in game 2. They hard won in game 2. So that's definitely a plus for Rogue Warriors. As for the negatives, my dud of the series is actually going to go to Zhao Meng on the winning WE side. His stat line would not tell you that he was the dud of the series. That 14, 6, and 9 stat line is not a bad stat line at all. It's actually really good, and he played the late game team fights all right. I just wanted to make him my dud of the series because truly he makes some unbelievably stupid positioning mistakes. There were probably 4 or 5 times. He went 14, 6, and 9. 4 or 5 of those 6 deaths were completely avoidable. Mostly the ones where he just gets 1v1. He's trying to 1v1 Kellen on the Aphelios as Kaisa, and you're just not going to be able to do that. The Aphelios had 6 or so kills by that point. It just wasn't going to happen. And then I believe it was in game 1 where he got caught out in the mid lane right around a dragon fight on Samira, where he just shouldn't have been there at all. There was really no reason for him to even have been there in the first place. So a lot of positioning mistakes from Zhao Meng. This is definitely characteristic of him. This is a lot more similar to what we saw in spring rather than what we saw in summer from him. He's really going to need to adjust that if this team really wants to compete, because you can't be having an 80 carry that gets caught out like that against these top teams like Top Esports, Suning, and then Invictus Gaming and JD Gaming and everybody else like that. As for other minuses, I think Haro is a big one to point out. Haro did not have a very good series here. He just looked outmatched on the Pantheon in game 1. He couldn't do anything against the Sejuani. The Sejuani completely shut him off. And then in game 2 on the Graves, the Olaf kept up with him in farm, and Olaf is just going to have a more impactful early game. And then obviously that very, very dumb Baron fight where he sticks on the Baron while everybody else leaves and dies to Baron, and then EDG gets to steal Baron. Their 2k gold lead is evaporated immediately, just throwing the game, essentially. He had a very bad series. He probably should be dud of the series, but I wanted to make a point with Zhao Meng more so than Haro. But Haro probably was the worst player in this series. I also want to point out Ziv and Forge, who did not, show off a bunch. Forge, I don't think was that bad. He just wasn't. He's kind of being leaned on to be the carry along with Haro for this team, and he didn't show that up. Ziv got absolutely trampled in game 2. He was a big reason why they lost. I wasn't a big fan of how WE played game 2 because they had such a lead on the Aurelia in the top lane on Breathe, and they didn't really capitalize on it like they needed to. He was up, I think, probably 110 CS at 20 minutes, just something ridiculous. And I know, obviously, the Aurelia is a huge counter pick there, but you can't lose by 110 CS. It's just a very, very difficult matchup, or difficult thing to do. So Ziv kind of getting called out for that as well. But as for moving forward, WE, I think, looks all right. You need to clean up the mistakes, and then Rogue Warriors needs to find an identity, and Haro really needs to turn it around. That brings us to our final series of Week 1, and that is going to be Invictus Gaming taking on JD Gaming in a 2-0 win for IG, and what a lot of people would consider a relative upset. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Game 1 was very, very dominant, very snowbally. A very unfortunate fight around Dragon caused Rookie to get an absolute shit ton of kills. I believe he was 3-0-3 at 9 minutes. He just was incredibly fed on the Orianna, and at that point, there was really not much they could do. They had June, their rookie jungler, who I think I said in the preseason Power Rankings that Ning was still on roster. He is not. He's officially been released as of now. So June comes in, and he had a few blunders early. I'll get to that when I talk a little bit more about him, but he gets really fed on the Nidalee here. Rookie gets really fed on the Orianna, and it just snowballs out of control. There's really not much that JD Gaming can do. You can see Invictus Gaming, for all their flaws, which we've talked about, at extensive levels, they're probably one of the most difficult teams to play against from behind. When they're ahead, they just suffocate you. They take absolutely everything. You're going to be left with no minions. You're going to be left with no jungle camps. you're just really not going to have any way of getting back into the game. They are probably one of the top 3 teams in the entire world from ahead, and that was definitely shown off in this series. Game 2 was a little bit more close. However, IG still pulled out. That top lane matchup was really the big difference in Game 2. The Wukong getting absolutely camped in Game 2 against that Gnar. The Shy was able to get really far ahead. The Gnar was able to completely change team fights, and even, Rookie on the Zoe was roaming around. He always had lane prio against GA on the Victor, and was just able to completely, neutralize any map presence that Kanavi wanted to have. Jun as well did a really good job of making sure Kanavi didn't have much. And that's, my player of the series is going to go to Rookie. I think he is actually my player of the week as well. He was dominant, 11-0 and 22 in the 2 games here. I mean, just absolutely dominant. He's proving again why he's one of the best players in the world. His Orianna shockwaves in Game 1 were absolutely devastating. He won some fights purely based off those alone. His roaming in Game 2 allowed his entire team to open up the map, and his poke damage with the Zoe was completely invaluable. It won them some fights. So Rookie, an easy choice for player of the series. Some positive players. You got to talk about Jun, who I think had a really good series. He made 2 really bad plays, one in both games. Not really bad plays, just really questionable plays. The Dragon take in Game 1, the first Dragon take at like 5 minutes was very, very bold. Him going down there, or him not going down originally, Lu Mao going in and Lu Mao getting taken out before they can take out Jun, was very, very unlucky for JDG. I think, Jun had basically no health. For him to have been able to survive that play, obviously he died eventually, but for him to be able to survive originally is ridiculous. And then in Game 2, it was that fight at Graves' red buff. Graves was taking red buff. Graves actually smited and won the red buff, and Nidalee went and took the fight anyways. And of course, Wukong's going to be able to collapse a lot quicker than the Gnar is. So Wukong, roams in, is able to pick up that kill. It was actually a double kill. I believe Gnar ended up dying as well. And a 2-for-0. A really, really bad play there by Jun. He should know that he cannot take that fight there, that the Shy is not going to be able to cover him. But after that, he actually camped top lane a lot after giving that Wukong early kill. He was able to shut down the Wukong, diving him under tower with the Zoe, with the Gnar. There was really not anything that the Wukong could do. It got the Shy super far ahead on the Gnar to the point where he just snowballed out of control. The Shy also had a very good series, but especially in that Game 2, he was really able to snowball out of the control with all the ganks that he received. But my dud of the series is actually going to be GA. GA starting in the mid lane here. It looks like they are going to want to go for the combo of GA and Mystic whenever Mystic does return. I believe he just celebrated his 26th birthday with his family, so he's not quite in China as of now, but whenever he does return, I believe he is going to be the starting AD carry, and I'm going to have a lot more faith in this team once that happens, because right now, when you have GA and Loken as your 2 carries, it's just such a passive duo. There really isn't much going on. You're picking Victor and Jin every game, and you really don't have a lot of lane presence. And when you're going up against someone like the Shy, who is such a lane aggressive and dominant player, and you can't really play through top lane, it's really tough to see where you're going to generate advantages, because GA is not that player, and Loken is not that player. Like I said, I think that's going to fix a lot when Mystic comes in for AD carry, but for this series, Rookie has obviously historically always had GA's number, except in the playoffs, but at least in the regular season. I did not like the Victor picks here. I thought they were significantly too passive for the team comp that they had around him. Victor just never really was able to get online. He was essentially relegated to wave clear duty in all 3 lanes in both games. There was really not much he was able to accomplish, and I chalked that up a lot to draft. I don't really get the Victor pick, but that's just me personally. GA, I think, is absolutely capable of bouncing back. I just don't think this series was quite what you wanted to see if you were a JD Gaming fan. And that wraps it up for week 1 here in the LPL. On the screen, you are going to see the current LPL standings. Obviously, not much to see because we've only had 4 series play, so only 8 teams have games. And you're also going to see the changes in my power rankings. I'm going to be updating this every single week. You'll notice Invictus Gaming has been my big riser. Invictus and Suning are now 1 and 2 for me, taking out who originally I had as the top 2 in Top Esports and JD Gaming. Those 2 fall down to 3 and 4, respectively. FunPlus, unfortunately, going to fall just because of the rise of IG and Suning. Other big risers this week are going to be OMG for their really good showing against a team that a lot of people expect to be a playoff team, and EDG, and then WE leaping over EDG in the standings with their more convincing win. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like, leave a comment on how you guys felt about week 1 or how you feel about this format of video. I love reading all the comments. I respond to most of you guys down there as well. So go ahead and leave a comment on what you'd like to say. Other than that, though, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will see you all later.